Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Today we're doing Vedic Psychology Class 2. I'm going to start with asking everyone just to think for a minute why you're here. Just to think in your head, like, was it because you're interested in Vedic psychology? Was it because I read the email that Babaji sent that said you should be here? Was it because you heard that we're doing case studies and you want to analyze other people? Or what is your purpose of being here? So just take a moment. Maybe you already know, and this is like mundane for you, but I'm wondering if everybody is really clear about why you're here. Because that's important to know that. And if you have something to write with, you could even write it down so you can stay really clear about like what is your purpose. Okay? So the purpose of Vedic psychology is to learn about yourself in order to clear out anything that's blocking your mind from advancing spiritually. Okay? So it's for self-improvement, improvement of your mind, improvement of your character through your own efforts. All right? So that's why I'm here. That's what I'm here to help you do. Now, I don't know how this chat works. Oh, people are writing why they're here. Okay, you keep to yourself. This is another thing. This isn't like a group therapy, so I'm asking you for you to introspect yourself and write it down. You don't need to share it on the chat. Okay. So the focus of Vedic psychology is on you. That also may seem obvious, but I don't think it's obvious to some. So I'm just spelling it out. Okay, so Vedic psychology is about self-awareness. And it's not a selfish act to be self-aware and to focus on yourself. If you see all these pictures, these are different examples of people, when they introspect, realizing certain things about themselves. Like, look at the guy, he's looking in the mirror. Look, he thinks he's like a young guy, but he's really old, so he's got to understand that he's like aging. And then here is like the head, see the white head, but if you introspect, you'll see that you have some people say, like your shadow side or your dark side. There's a woman here looking in the mirror. It looks like maybe she's seeing herself clearly through some good introspection. And then there's a man here looking at himself. Maybe he's pointing at himself, so maybe he's like really self-critical. But introspection can help you see a lot of things. And the whole goal of this Vedic psychology is to raise your self-awareness, but you have to do it by looking in, right? And the reason why I'm saying it's not a selfish act is I've heard that for years from people. When I start having them do introspection and do things that are good for themselves and spend the time on themselves, they'll say, that's selfish, I shouldn't be doing that, that's not spiritual. Okay? So to improve upon ourselves is actually a sattvic act. Because the more each of us improves ourselves individually, then the more harmonious our whole community will be. So it doesn't matter what community. We could be talking about the community at Jiva Ashram. You could be talking about your family if you live in a nuclear family. You could be talking about a business place, So the more we improve on ourselves, it's actually an act of goodness for everybody that we interact with. Okay, so I just want to make that point. So when you become light, you bring light to this world. So that's the idea. All of us becoming light. Okay? But the first step is we have to see clearly where we stink. Okay? And that's hard. It's right? Isn't it much easier to see where everybody else stinks? So to see where we stink, it's like, woo, So that's what Vedic psychology is. And that's why a lot of people actually don't like it. Because you don't want to see where you stink, and you certainly don't want someone else to point out where you stink. But we have to do that if we want to advance on our spiritual path. We have to see where we stink and move that stuff out. Okay? So people in the mode of Sattva, they see where they stink. And they identify their issues very quickly, and they work really hard to eradicate their problem. So some of the pictures I put here was just to give examples of where we often realize through Vedic psychology, through introspection, where we stink. So this lady here, she has like a fake smile on. I don't know if you've ever done that in life, where you have to like fake it to make it. There's actually something called toxic positivity. I don't know if you've heard of that. You can Google it. Toxic positivity, where you're like, oh yeah, no, I'm good, yeah, I'm so happy, I'm so grateful, or whatever it is, but really you're like burning up in jealousy inside. But you're like, I'm so happy for you. You just X, Y, or Z. Like, oh, you just got married. I'm so happy for you. But if you had that desire to get married and you never did, you're burning up. You're not really happy for that person. But then you fake it and you act like, oh, and you never address the real issue. So that's one thing you can realize through introspection. Another one is this mask, This guy's taking the mask off. Same idea kind of like being fake, and putting on a show. But inside there's deeper stuff to work through. And this guy is like saying, wait a minute, no, it's me. After all these years, it's actually me who's the problem. So people in the mode of Sattva can see these things. Or even this one, look at the apple. You see how it looks, how the apple's being projected out to the world? That it's like perfect, but inside, it's all eaten up. And this, it could be like through, probably some childhood trauma that maybe you don't even realize that you've had, or how it affects you and how it plays out in your adult life and your adult relationships. So these are all ways that Vedic psychology can help if we can get, all of us, we can get in the mode of Sattva. Then you can see these things and you can change. So when people are in the mode of Sattva, they see where they stink, is what I call it, and then they identify their issues very quickly. And then they work hard to eradicate their problem. Okay? People in the mode of Sattva, they don't have time, actually, to focus on other people's inadequacies because they're completely devoted to improving themselves, and that's a full-time job, right? Any of you who are doing work right now in therapy, you know how hard it is to keep hammering away at whatever your issue is every week. It's hard. So it's a full-time job. You don't even have time to notice what other people are doing if you're doing your deep digging, So Gandhi had this concept of the three wise monkeys, where you hear no evil, and you speak no evil, and you see no evil, or see no evil, and speak no evil. So that's the idea. And you don't even have to remember to do this if you're focused on yourself and your self-improvement. So Sattvic people, they understand the purpose of Vedic psychology very clearly, understand the purpose of the teachings, and then they align their actions with the purpose. So if the purpose is self-improvement, then whatever you're hearing in these classes, you're turning it onto you, and you're going, okay, it's self-improvement. So you don't have a lot of time to focus on all the extraneous other details or ask questions that are kind of like off topic just because it's interesting. Unless it's going to help you improve, then it's not really related. Okay? So that was just a little ramp up about Vedic psychology, and now I'm going to get into the outline of what we're going to talk about today. So today I'm going to talk about just a quick review of the learner types, which we talked about last week, and then I'm going to do a deeper dive into Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, and then I'll give a little homework. Because this week I got a lot of different emails with questions, and I had a lot of conversations with people about Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And I kind of did it really quick, you'll see how much more I have to tell you this week about it. So a lot of it just may be review for you, and maybe some of it will be new. So just the review part is the three learner types, right? Remember I presented this slide that the Sattvic type as a learner is very clear, very concise, and they're self-reflective. They're taking whatever you're telling and they're looking at themselves with that information. The Rajasic type, they're impatient, right? They know it all, and then they're competitive. They want to be better than you, right? And then the Tamasic type, they're confused. They're not quite sure, like what? And what should I do with this information? Or did she mean this or that? And then they're insensitive, right? So they'll do things, particularly in a classroom, that might upset the other students, but they won't realize it. So a review of the learner types. Remember this slide? I kind of went into a little detail of these learner types. So the Sattvic learner understands the purpose, right, and realizes that the content is actually about them. Not all of it, but pulls the pieces that relate to them and uses it to improve themselves. They focus on applying the lesson to themselves. They take responsibility for their thoughts, their feelings, and their behavior, and then they make steps to change. The Rajasic learner they typically will ask questions that are irrelevant. It's like about an extraneous detail that wasn't really the point. and they don't really quite understand the answers. Oftentimes, if you're teaching, you'll feel like they heard you, and then they seem like they get it, but then they ask the same question again the next class, or they just in one ear out the other, and it's like, oh, they didn't really get it. They don't see how the lecture applies to them. They're more focused on, if you're doing a case study, they're more focused on the person you're analyzing. And then they forget the purpose actually of what you're trying to teach. And especially in Vedic psychology, they forget that the purpose is for them to improve themselves. So they try to help other people as an expert, and they'll point out other people's mistakes or their problems, even their own teacher. And then the third type is a tamasic learner. They don't understand the purpose, therefore they ask really long-winded kind of rambling questions. They'll like tell a story before, and then you're like, what is the question? What is your point? They go in circles, they're off topic. I already said in the last slide, they're insensitive to how their questions kind of derail the class. Or they're just so confused actually about the topic that they don't even ask a question. They just sit like silently. I remember when Babaji was teaching me about Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, he told me, I forgot where we were, but I was saying, oh, that person is so sattvic. And he's like, yeah, Sattva looks like it can be Sattva, but it also, a tamasic person can look sattvic. And it's because they're quiet. So I'm like, oh, they're so peaceful. But once they start talking, you realize, oh, they're completely confused, So that's interesting. So they also think they're good at introspecting. The tamasic people are like, oh, I have the best insight, And they use the case concepts that I'll be teaching in Vedic psychology. They'll take the concept and they'll use it as a way to they'll use the right jargon to kind of control other people or manipulate other people. And they think they have mastered Vedic psychology and they don't need to participate in class. Like everyone else has the problem but me. And one other interesting thing is that when Babaji and I used to travel and teach together, we had a mind type survey that we wrote. And so we would give the mind type survey to people. And you can take it and you can determine if you're sattvic, rajasic, or tamasic, And I don't think we ever had one person who said they're rajasic or tamasic. Everywhere we went, everybody was sattvic. So we were like, I don't think we're going to give the mind type survey anymore, because we would do a whole lecture on it. We would explain Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, and then we were saying you're supposed to introspect, and then we'd give the survey at the end, and we were like, so everybody in this room is sattvic? And they're like, oh yeah. And there's like people like sleeping during the lecture, people coming late, people like, we're like, okay. Then we tried the next place. Everybody's sattvic. So it's funny, that's what I'm saying, is that a lot of people in Tamas think they're sattvic, as well as they can even fool us if they're kind of quiet and they seem grounded, So that's just a review from a little bit of what I talked about last time. And then today I'm going to do a deeper dive into Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. Wouldn't that be nice to jump in that water right now? I'm totally sweating. Huh? There's no fan and noisy. Okay. Okay, but what I was thinking is some of you might be thinking, wait, but why? Why focus so much on Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas? I know my learner type already, right? So let's move. I want to analyze other people. Let's just get to the case study, because I know I promised that. So Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas are the culprits of our suffering. So that's why we need to focus on them, because they bind us to our body. They're like the root cause of our suffering. The gunas, namely Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, which are born of material nature, bind the imperishable embodied being to the body. So that's why we're going to give them some more attention.
Just question us at the end.
At the end.
Ask you.
At the end. Thank you. So being attached to our body is the root cause of our suffering. So you can see here somebody's crying, probably because something related to their body, something that they're attached to, they lost, right? And then you can see this jealous woman in the middle. Probably there's some girl talking to her boyfriend or husband. Look at her face. She doesn't have to say anything, right? And then here it looks like there's a woman grieving. Maybe they lost someone they love, probably, something like that, right? So this is all because whatever their body, whatever their ego is attached to, their ahankara, is causing this suffering. Thank you, Vila. I'm suffering now. I'm attached to my body that's sweating. Okay. So in sattva, of these gunas, sattva, being pure, is illuminating and free from misery. But it binds by attachment to happiness and knowledge. So that's interesting. Even in a state of sattva, we have attachment to our knowledge, to our happiness. And look at this little girl. So she must not want her mom to leave. She's totally like hanging onto her leg, you know. So her mom probably gives her some feeling of happiness, right? She doesn't want to lose that. So this is Bhagavad Gita 14:6. In Rajas, know Rajas to be the nature of passion and the source of desire and attachment. It binds the embodied self by attachment to action. So look at this person driving with all their things to do. Pick up dinner, breathe, don't forget to pick up the dry cleaning, soccer practice at 3, yoga at 7 a.m., and in the middle it says, stay positive. She has to remember, okay, stay positive, right? And then here's a picture of New York City, just a busy street in New York City, and Babaji says that's the Rajas capital, New York City. He's like, this is the capital, for Rajas. It's always moving. 3 in the morning, there's like people and lights, and you would not even know it's nighttime actually. It's so bright there, And then here we have first, second, and third place. And Babaji, I'm sure you guys have heard him, but he always talks about how it's not really about being first. It's about the fact that you beat 2 other people. You feel so triumphant when other people lose. So that's this is like Rajas, like passionate, you have to be number 1, and also it feels just so good to see those losers next to you, So this is Rajas. And then Tamas is know Tamas to be the source of ignorance, the deluder of all embodied beings. It binds fast through carelessness, lethargy, and sleep. So that's how Tamas binds us. And you can see here eating pizza, lounging on the couch. You can see like a messy room. That's like the state of Tamas, like just probably dirty clothes all thrown there, maybe mixed in with clean clothes too. If you don't do your dishes and you just let them all like pile up there in that corner picture, and then look at this guy. Does he look sattvic to you or rajasic? Or like he looks confused, right? He's like, huh? So that's Tamas. Bhagavad Gita 14:8. So I wrote a list just so you can get a feel for like sattvic. If you see these characteristics, you could think that that's probably sattvic personality types. So they set clear goals. If you're in the mode of sattva, you set clear goals and you work to achieve them. Because for example, Rajas, you could set a goal, but getting it done is a different story. Whereas sattva is like, here's the goal and here's what I'm doing, and and I work to achieve that. You're not all over the place like Rajas, which is like a chaotic windstorm. You say what you're going to do, and then you follow through. You follow a set routine and you're disciplined. You're balanced and you're peaceful, but you also do everything like in moderation, So that's a sign also of being balanced. Like you don't work all the way to like 2 in the morning, right? Like you have a time that you stop, and then you have your dinner, and then you do something relaxing after. Sattvic types are appreciative of their peers, and then they express their appreciation. They understand others and support them by listening, not advising. The mode of Tamas and Rajas would be like telling them what to do. But in Sattva, you don't think that you know better. You don't try to tell someone else to do. You just listen. That's a rare thing these days, right? To have somebody like, doesn't this lady look like she's completely like, I hear you, right? In that picture? It's so rare to have that. To have somebody fully just like hear you out without telling you what to do about it or analyzing you. It's a gift you can give to somebody. Sattvic types keep their space very organized and clean and neat. They don't have a lot of clutter. They're inclusive of others, and they have harmonious relationships. So that ahankara is down, it's not about me and mine. It's about us, and if somebody in the community is down, you try to help, you try to uplift. And they take responsibility for their behaviors and they apologize. Now that's a rare thing for Rajas and Tamas, right? So in Sattva, you can see yourself clearly, so you can see, oh, I'm sorry, my bad, I didn't mean to X, Y, or Z, You see what you did, how you maybe hurt somebody or upset somebody, and you apologize. Sattvic types are not a financial burden to society. So oftentimes in the Tamas types are, right? They're you feel kind of sucked dry by them. In Sattva, this is a funny one, they send short emails. So the reason why I'm saying it is because I only have taught once for 1 week, one time, and I got a lot of very long emails. And so that's just for you to think, like if you have, like Sattvic types also have empathy and compassion, so they're what am I going to put that teacher through? or what am I going to put anyone else through? I'm going to send like a very long email, you know? So that would be you in the mode of Rajas or Tamas doing that. Because sattvic types, they're clear in their thinking, they're very precise, they're succinct in their speech. And like I said, I didn't put it here, but they're empathetic, you know? They think before they do something, you know? They think through, how would I affect the other person with that? And what is my point? Why am I writing all that? Sattvic types are also on time, and they're actually usually early. And they're aware of how their behavior affects others. So if you're sattva predominant, in the Bhagavad Gita 14:11, it says, when knowledge illuminating the factual nature of objects arises in all the cognitive senses, which are the gates into the body, then one should know that sattva is indeed predominant. We need sattva in order to see ourselves clearly and to see our attachments that cause us suffering. So the Rajasic types, they like spicy foods and caffeinated drinks. They wear bright colored or patterned clothes. So you can see these pictures, like neon green and like hot red, you know, so this is Rajas. They love to move their body, so they're like walking, running, jumping, you know, they're very active. You know, like my father's passed away now, but he was like total Rajas, you know, and he's always bouncing his leg. Like if we were talking, he's either shaking his foot or bouncing his leg. He had so much like Rajas energy, you know. Rajas types are never satisfied. There's always like more. I need more. I can do more. I can do better. Or you can give me more. Or you can give me, you know, like they'd like to get more. They do everything with intensity. They have the 3 C's. They're really good at these 3 things: comparing to others, criticizing others, and competing. Because they're passionate. That's what Rajas is. It's in the mode of passion. They like strong tastes and touches, smells, sounds, and sights. So for all 5 senses, they like strong. They don't like the subtle things, you know. Babaji told that story. I think about, I forgot who it was, but who liked the 10 packs of hot sauce. You know, it's like very, you know, it's not like a little subtle. You dip it in a little hot thing. It's like just put 10 packs on and like, or just eat the hot sauce plain. You know, that's like Rajas. They have disorganized spaces because they're going 100 miles an hour and they're packing 10 extra things in the day that they don't even have time for, you know? So it's always like, you know, hectic and kind of chaotic. They follow an irregular daily routine. So one day they're doing this and that and the other, but then they heard about this great thing, so they cram that in too, and then I'll just stay up 2 more hours later and talk to this person, you know? So it's not like the sattva where every day it's like the standard set stable routine. Rajasic types overschedule and undersleep. They overdo everything, kind of like workaholics. They're not all workaholics, but whatever they put their Rajasic energy into, they're going to overdo it, you know. They tend towards anxiety. They're hypocritical, and they make promises and don't follow through. Sounds good. So for Rajas predominant, when Rajas is predominant, greed, activity, undertaking of work with a material motive, and uncontrollable desire for sense objects become manifest. Bhagavad Gita 14:12. So you can see the guy with money, he's like, and then this is like a, you know, uncontrollable desire for sense objects. So this is some woman looking, you know, attractive, attracting probably a lot of men. But Rajas is very important. So we need Rajas. We need it for motivation, we need it for inspiration, we need it for passion, to get things done, to act, for having some sort of excitement, and for accomplishing big goals. So if we had no Rajas, and if we said, oh, this is bad, you read all that list and you're like, I don't want any Rajas, then you're never going to get anything done. Because Sattva doesn't really move. They just sit there and study or meditate. And Tamas also doesn't move for different reasons. You know, they like the couch, maybe the fried chicken or whatever, the pizza, sleeping, right? So we need Rajas to move. It's just, so we don't want to feel bad about it, we just want to use it in the right way to move in the right direction we want to go in our life. Tamasic types, you see this is how the room would look, right? It's different than the Rajas is like kind of messy, but Tamas is messy and like dirty, more like this might be a bunch of dirty clothes, and you see she looks like kind of depressed, like unmotivated, she can't get it done to clean all this stuff up. Whereas the Rajasic types, they're doing too much other stuff, and that's why they can't clean it up. So it's a difference, even though it looks the same, like a pile of clothes. So the Tamasic types, they eat heavy things like fried foods, or they reheat food, They microwave food, they eat leftover food, or they eat like takeout food or packaged foods, meat, eggs, fish, and mushrooms. You know, ideally you wouldn't have food that's more than 3 hours old. That would be if you want to eat sattvic, you know, it's like within 3 hours, and then otherwise it's getting too old. Tamasic types also like weed or marijuana, beer, or I think here in India it's called bhang, but things that are downers. They're messy, dirty, and cluttered spaces. They have like, that's the MO there. They just can't motivate to clean it, basically, or organize it. They make bad decisions. That's kind of a broad word, but basically they can't see clearly. You know, Tamas is in the mode of dull, heavy, thick, you know, maybe even depressed, so they can't see things clearly. So they make decisions from an unclear place. They tend to accumulate things. They oversleep and overeat. They underdo things, except for sleeping and eating. They gossip, and they tend to be pretty negative. Sorry, I just went black. Negative and critical. Is this still on? Okay. Okay. They tend to wear dark-colored clothes, or even dirty clothes. This is a funny story. So, you know, I see most of my clients, almost all of them online, on video, you know. And so when I'm teaching them, I oftentimes will start with teaching them about Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas and the guna they're in. And they all think they're in Sattva, like I said, you know. And then I'll say, okay. And then I'll try to give them some more hints. I'll describe Rajas and Tamas, and they're still like, no, I'm Sattva. And then I say, okay, just take a peek at what color shirt you're wearing. And inevitably, they're always wearing dark blue or black, which is total Tamas. And I'm like, okay, why did you pick that shirt? You know, so oftentimes we don't realize it, but by the color of shirt even you're choosing to wear, you know, it can be an indicator of your mind. Like, whatever color you're gravitating towards, it's something made that decision. It didn't just come out of thin air. You know, it's not like my past life karma made me pick, you know, black today. It's your mood. What mood were you in is the color you wore. So that's really helpful. And I've worked with some clients to make a plan to get them out of this tamas mode, even just by changing the color shirt they wear. And it helps a lot, actually. So tamasic types also tend to procrastinate. Like in this picture, the woman's probably not going to clean up her clothes that day. She's like, oh, I can't do it. There's something else I've got to do and that's more important, probably like sleep. They tend to blame others. They think they're great and they have no problems. They tend towards depression, and they depend on others for financial support. And they hold grudges. They just can't accept whatever it is that happened. They can't seem to let things go. Tamasic predominant is when tamas is predominant, there's an absence of discrimination. There's an indifference to your duty. You know, that's why this woman is taking this man's money, right? And these two men down here look like, right, the tamas time, you know? Careless, delusion, and delusion. So they're indifference to duty. They have the carelessness and the delusion, and they begins to manifest. So this is Bhagavad Gita 14:13. But tamas is fundamental for our health. That's the thing. If we had no tamas, how would we sleep? You know, tamas is the thing that helps us sleep. So it also slows us down. It also makes us stable, and so that's grounding for us. So in fact, we're constantly moving between all these three gunas in any given day, all the time. You know, tamas makes us sleep. Rajas propels us to act, and sattva impels us to do good. So we need all three gunas. But we want to have them in the proper proportion, right? We want sattva to be the predominant one, and then some rajas would be nice so we can actually do our sattvic work, and then tamas so we can feel a little grounded and we can sleep. In the mode of sattva, advancement in spiritual life becomes a lot easier. If sattva is predominant, then we can see ourselves clearly. So here, the reason why I put this picture is, this is, for example, if somebody's coming to see me for a session for Vedic Psychology, you know, this is what the iceberg above the water is what they can see about themselves. But really underneath, it's a much bigger, you see how that iceberg is a lot bigger and deeper, and that's like all the childhood stuff that they can't see, that's driving them to behave the way they're behaving, to think the way they're thinking, to feel the way they're feeling. So the idea is that when sattva becomes predominant, when we get, you know, in the mode of sattva, then we can see that iceberg ourselves. We can see our samskaras. You know, we can say, oh shoot, I'm sorry for acting that way towards you because my whatever samskara was triggered, and I didn't mean to do that. I was like seeing red at that time. I was so angry, but I didn't realize it was something inside of me. It's not really you. So we can see our samskaras clearly. We can see our ahankara clearly, And we can see our manas, which is our emotional mind. We can see all of those things clearly if sattva is predominant. We can also listen clearly. And that, I know I brought it up earlier, but when you think about listening, how often in your life do you feel that someone like really hears you? Like you really feel understood? You know, it's pretty rare, right? I mean, you can talk, but then the person's like checking their text, or they're like, oh, I have to go, or they say back what they think, right? Or they say their opinion, or you think they're listening, but then when they say something back, you're like, oh, they didn't get me, you know? So when our samskaras are cleared and our hankara is down, it's humble, and manas is peaceful, then we're in a nice bodhisattva where we can really hear the other person. It feels so nice. Then you feel like you have a heart-to-heart connection with somebody, right? When they really hear you. That's what a good therapist does, right? That they listen. They don't just tell you what to do. They don't make you feel bad about yourself. They hear you. They hold the space for you to feel really heard, you know? And that's sometimes when things get messy is when people think their therapist is their friend. Because you don't really know the therapist at all. The therapist is holding back all their personal stuff to give you the space to talk. But then you're like, oh, you're my friend. You know, people tell me that. And I'm like, well, I'm not really your friend because you don't know me. You know, I'm not sharing my stuff. I'm just holding the space for you. So the idea with Vedic psychology is you learn how to be a good listener, you know, and be truly a good friend, you know, by you being a good listener to yourself first, looking in and seeing where your parts are, where you're stuck, and clearing those out with compassion. And once you've done that for yourself, then you can really hold the space in a really loving way for anybody. So, and to that end, we also can empathize with and support others as well, you know, once we've cleared our stuff out. We're responsive and we're clear communicators if we're in the mode of sattva. And we have compassion for other people, and we try our best to uplift others. So if you see somebody kind of like behaving what we could say badly or in an inappropriate way, instead of being like, well, what is their problem? Or that person's so annoying. It's like, oh, I feel bad for them. You know, like they probably have some childhood trauma where maybe their father wasn't in their life or their mother wasn't in their life in a way that they needed. So they're like trying to get attention right now and be heard. It's in an annoying way, perhaps, if we don't realize it's like a very hurt little kid who's trying to just get attention, you know? So once we see that inner child in ourselves that's hurt, and once we start nurturing that side of ourselves, then we're able to have a lot more love and compassion for anybody around us who's having behavior that could seem annoying, you know? Then we understand why. It's almost like they can't help it, and maybe they don't even see it in themselves, right? Because if you see it in yourself, then you try to change that. But if you don't see it, you know, you just think it's the other person who's picking on me or something. So, in the mode of sattva, we also understand how our behavior affects others. We almost have like a filter, I'd say, or a break. So before you send that email, that like critical email to somebody, or before you're short with somebody, or you say something, you know, that somebody could take the wrong way, you think, now, how would I feel if I received that? Would I like to receive that email? Would I like to receive that text? Or that, whatever it is that we're doing, and you really think, if you put yourself in the other person's shoes, then you probably wouldn't do certain things that you've done. But what happens is if you're not in the mode of sattva, if you're rajas, and you're so passionate, and you're going a million miles an hour, and you have 100 ideas, you just kind of steamroll people. You know, you don't think how you're going to affect them. Or in tamas, you really can't think, because you're so diluted in your thinking. You're so heavy and dull, and you're just basically trying to get what you can from people. So you don't have to actually do, you know, motivate to do it yourself, you know? So that also is, people can feel used by you if you're in the mode of tamas. So even though you're like in the mode of sattva, you're loving, you're understanding, you're empathetic, you're compassionate, still your focus is on yourself, what you need to do for you and your studies. You know, because oftentimes people in the mode of sattva are studying. I'm talking about this community, right? So what I'm trying to, I didn't write it out here, but the difference is you can be a pretty good listener and a clear communicator and very compassionate and uplifting to people if you're codependent. It can look like you're in this high mode of sattva. But what happens is that you're actually doing it from an empty place. In other words, you're tired, you haven't got enough sleep, you haven't taken care of your needs, and you're sacrificing all that just to get the other person to like you or not be mad at you. That's not what I'm talking about. So if you're in the mode of sattva, You're taking care of yourself. You've done what you need to do for your studies. You've done what you need to do for your sleep and for your eating and for whatever it is to make you feel full and ready to show up, in the world. And then when you come from that full place, you're like overflowing with compassion and love. But it doesn't look lopsided that you're doing all this for everybody else, but then you're empty at the end of the day because you didn't do enough for you. Okay? So that's why I'm saying your focus is on you, on your studies. We're disciplined yet generous, right? And we're clear and we're driven by our spiritual goal, and that grounds us. We're doing that first, and then we're connecting with other people and being compassionate kind of second. It's not that we're not compassionate, but you're always taking care of you first. That's what I'm going back to at the beginning when I said it's not selfish to see yourself and to take care of yourself and to know yourself and what needs to be taken care of. Sometimes if you realize you have some big fat samskara, you might have to work on that for, you might need a lot of hours of quiet time to journal or to cry or to get out your anger. This is hard work actually to blast through that stuff. And that means sometimes you might not make it to kirtan, or you might not make it to some group thing, and you can't be worried so much what other people think. It's more about like, what do I need to do to take care of me so when I show up I can be peaceful and grounded and present. So if sattva is predominant, then we don't focus on like the wrong details of the class, just say. We don't focus on what the teacher or what our classmates did wrong, and we don't tell them how to improve. We don't get triggered by the other students. We don't compete, we don't compare, we don't criticize, we don't control. We understand the concepts that are being taught, and we apply them to ourselves immediately. Like our life depended on it, We're trying to get out of this problem, and so the sooner we get out of it, the better, right? So we're trying to change quickly. We're like, oh, whoa, I didn't realize I had that problem. Let me grab that. Instead of like, so-and-so did this, or you did this, let me tell you how to improve that. It'd be better if you did this. That's someone, probably in the mode of Rajas or Tamas. If we're in the mode of Rajas, advancement in spiritual life is accomplished by controlling and manipulating others. If we're in the mode of Tamas, advancement in spiritual life is accomplished by indulgence in the body, such as investing in a spiritual wardrobe, fostering social relationships with others, celebrating birthdays, and other things related to attachment to the body. So some of this may be hard to hear, and I'm sure that like ahankara can feel a little, triggered, and also that, well, that's not me, that's so-and-so. But Babaji reviewed all these slides and didn't make any changes. He said this is really good. So these are things that he also agrees with. So in terms of homework, I'm going to give homework, and then we can open up for like question and discussion. So the homework, if you're into it, and I'm going to send you guys also the slides, if you want them, is identify one specific point in the lecture about Rajas or Tamas that describes you, that you would like to change. Unless you think you don't have any Rajas and Tamas. But I wrote a lot of points. So write one point that you're like, either on Rajas or Tamas, that you're like, oh, that's me and that's something I'd like to change. Write it down, but don't change it. Just for the next week, be aware of it. Just watch yourself. Just see how many times, so try to increase your awareness of it by noting down, how often am I doing this thing? This Rajasic thing, just say. What are your feelings that are driving you to do it? So this is raising your level of awareness. What feeling is driving you to act in that way? And then what are your thoughts that impel you to do it? Okay, I'm going to show you an example in a minute. And then why do you do it? Okay, so for example, so one specific point in the lecture about Rajas. This is me, okay? This is my example. I overschedule and undersleep. So my PhD is done, so I don't need to do this, but I still do it. It's like my nature. It's hard to change that, right? So I'll say, oh yeah, okay, we can do that. I think tomorrow I'm seeing like 10 devotees, for sessions. That's a lot. And there's still a few people waiting. Can I see you tomorrow? So I probably should have said like, well, my original plan was to see 4 on Sunday. So I don't know how it got to be 10, but it's because of my Rajas. It's hard for me to say no, basically. So I overscheduled, and then to create this PowerPoint on top of all the clients I'm seeing, I didn't get very much sleep because I have to prepare for this, right? So this is my issue. So to increase my awareness of it, I noted it down. How often? I did it twice this week. I overscheduled myself and I underslept as a result of that. So I did it twice. What are my feelings that drive me to do it? I feel guilty, if I don't help people, and empathetic. So I overschedule and undersleep. If someone's telling me I have a problem, can I talk to you? I feel bad being like, just wait a week, I'll talk to you next week. That makes me feel bad, you know, especially because I'm offering it. So those are the feelings that drive me to do it. What are my thoughts that impel me to do these behaviors? Oh, well, she really needs the help, and if I don't, maybe she'll become upset. She'll be like, you know, you promised me, and now you're not doing it, or, you know, you're making me wait a week, or so. That's, you know, it's good to be empathetic if you're a therapist, but it's also, it has its limits, you know, so this is something I want to work on. And why do I do it? Basically, I don't want others to become upset with me. So this is like a deep codependent thing that maybe some of you can relate to, and it's hard to get out of it completely. You know, that's why I'm saying it can look really spiritual, like, oh, wow, she's so helpful. But if I'm depleting myself, if I'm overworking and undersleeping, you know, that's not a good idea. So that's the example. Do you guys understand kind of how you would do it? You know, you pick one of those, there's long lists, lots of examples, right, of Rajas and Tamas. And then you do it, and then if you actually keep track of this, I think it would be very interesting, you know, over the week to just see for yourself. Because before we change something, we have to become aware of the problem, right? So it's like the iceberg, the picture of the iceberg. You see the tip of it, but you see how much is underneath. So the goal for this is to don't change it yet, just see how big the problem is. You know, is it not that big? Is it pretty big? How's it affecting you? When you start watching it and noting it down, it will help you. And then you can have more motivation to actually change it. Okay? Any questions? So I have to see, you have a question, Divya? I don't know how I can see if somebody, okay, Bhadra raised her hand, but I don't know how I can see the people. Huh? Not yet? Oh, okay, I can see you.
No.
Okay. Oh, Divya has a question, and then Bhadra. Okay. Yes, Divya.
So, can you highlight on this toxic positivity? What is it?
Okay, so I would say, I'll describe it a little, and then you research it too, and tell me what you think. It's an interesting concept. So the concept is that when things aren't going well in your life, not your life, but when you have a negative feeling, okay? So maybe you're angry at someone, maybe you're jealous about something, that you cover it up and just say, oh my God, I'm so happy, everything in my life is going so great, and I'm so happy for you, when really like you're jealous. Like the example I gave is like this, just say I wanted to get married, and then my friend got married. Instead of me admitting like I'm jealous, maybe not to her, but to myself at least, instead I'd be like, I am so happy for you, that's so amazing. I don't know, have you had somebody talk to you like that and it feels so insincere? You can tell when somebody's doing it, right? Have you, Divya? No? Have you experienced it?
I don't know.
No. So it's when you're being insincere about how you feel. It's incongruent. What you're saying is not matching how you're feeling. You're covering it with this sweetness that's like too syrupy sweet. It doesn't match actually your heart. And I don't know, for me, I can feel it. When somebody's like saying something very positive, you know, or another example is just say like, you know, we're supposed to all not be attached to our body, right? So then just say like your mother dies or your father dies or something, and you're like, oh, well, that's just Krishna's grace. You know, that's fine if that's what you really feel, but oftentimes you don't, because I work with devotees and they're in session crying with me, but they don't want to admit it because it's like, you know, so they cover it with this toxic positivity, like, oh, Krishna's grace. But really it's like, that's true. I'm not trying to say anything offensive against Krishna, but how you feel in your heart is devastated. So you cover it with these fake flowery words because you don't want people to see your true feelings. You know? Those are a couple examples. Does that make sense, Divya? Or?
Yes. So true feelings.
Yeah, true feelings don't match with what you're actually saying. There's a disconnect. And that's something you can see if you introspect. We probably all do it to some extent, but there's actually like a whole, I guess, condition called toxic positivity, kind of. It's not a diagnosis, but. Okay, do you have a question, Sujini? Oh, Bhagavati. Okay, Bhadra, I'm coming to you. Just one sec. I see you. One more question here, and then we'll go.
Bhagavati has a question.
Yeah.
She wants to know why to celebrate the birthday is to be in the mood of Tamas.
Okay. Well, I want Bhagavati to answer first why she thinks. Just give me a guess. So the question is, why is celebrating the birthday in the mode of Tamas? So you tell me first why you think it might be, and then I'll answer.
¿Por qué piensa usted que podría estar en el modo de Tamas?
And if you think it's not, then tell me why you think it's not.
Piensa que no, de la razón por qué.
Pienso que no, porque es honrar la vida y celebrarle, sea a otros a uno mismo.
She thinks that is not tamasic because it's one way to honor the life and also to give respect to other person.
O sea, es un sentimiento de amor y
It's
afecto.
a loving feeling towards the other person.
Okay. And you're celebrating their life?
¿Ustedes celebran su vida?
Y lo de mis seres queridos.
She always celebrates, and also with the people that she loves, she also celebrates the birthday.
So are you celebrating their life, or are you celebrating that they've lived another year?
¿Usted celebra que celebran que tienen un año nuevo o celebra que están
Que
viviendo?
esta forma humana de vida es muy difícil de adquirir.
No, está preguntando si usted celebra que tiene un año más o que está celebrando que está viviendo.
Que es tan difícil.
Celebra que está viviendo.
They've like completed another year, right?
She's celebrating that he or she is alive, that he or she is living.
Alive. Okay, so you're celebrating that their body's alive, right?
Está celebrando que el cuerpo está vivo.
No, que
No.
dile lo que te acaba de decir, que porque esta forma humana
Vamos
es muy
a
difícil.
seguir lo que ella está preguntando.
Pero es que esa es como la razón principal, porque esta forma humana es muy difícil de adquirir.
Sí, pero vamos a contestar lo que ella dice, no vamos a sacar otra pregunta.
¿Qué pregunta?
Pregunto si usted celebra que está vivo. Esa es la base de su celebración.
Sí,
She celebrates that the person is alive. This is
Yes.
the basis.
So we're celebrating that the question is, why is celebrating birthdays tamasic? And the reason why is because you're celebrating the body.
Es porque usted está celebrando un cuerpo.
You're celebrating a bag of basically, feces and urine and snot, and I mean that's what we're celebrating.
But she said that she is not the body, but she is the soul.
Right. So the soul's not aging. So what are you celebrating then every
El
year?
alma no está comiendo, el alma no lo está celebrando.
entonces, bueno, entonces, pues para mí es una muestra de afecto, entonces como no somos el cuerpo, no podemos expresar el afecto.
She said that this is a way to show affection, and if we don't have this body, we cannot show affection to others.
Okay. It's also about, if you think about it, it's also celebrating you.
Que también es una forma de... Perdón.
One, right? It's celebrating one. So that's also like ahankara is very me, this Tamas. It's like, it's all about me. Tamas is very selfish. So let's celebrate me. So I know you're saying from your point of view, you're giving love and you're celebrating the person, but you're actually increasing their Tamas when you do that.
Pero cuando usted celebra el cumpleaños de otra persona, está celebrando su Tamas.
You're making them more focused on themselves. I'm number one. It's my birthday. Give me gifts. Show me love. Yes, that's Tamas. That's the opposite. Like in India, oftentimes they don't celebrate their birthday. They actually give gifts, right? On their birthday, they give to other people. But in the West, we often we like to be celebrated. That's
Y
celebrate.
en el occidente celebramos porque queremos ser celebrados.
Thank you.
Okay.
Y no se celebra la vida, tener que celebrarlo.
Bhadra, your turn.
Haribol, Joshika, thank you so
Haribol.
much for your class today.
My
I
pleasure.
think you touch a very important point regarding the beneficial use of the different gunas. Like you were explaining that we should strive to be predominantly in sattva, but we should also be aware on the correct, let's say like this is the way I understood the correct use of rajas and tamas. And you were putting these examples like rajas to have things done and tamas to get good to sleep. So could you please elaborate more about that? I think that's very important. Thank you.
What elaboration do you need besides that?
I mean, is rajas, is to get things done in rajas the only use of rajas, and is the get good to sleep the only use of tamas, or they have other uses, like for the benefit of spiritual advancement?
So Rajas is all those things I listed, so there's more than just get things done. Rajas is the mode of passion. So it's to act, it's to move. Like, just say if you're totally sattvic, you're not going to even exercise. So we need to exercise to be healthy, right? So Rajas is the one that impels us to like go on a run or go on the elliptical machine, or Rajas is anything that you need to act, you need Rajas for. So get things done is one thing, you can say like that, but it's also anytime you need to act, even an inspiration, like an idea, that's Rajas. So it can be thought of like that, that it's not just to get something done. It's passion, it's some movement at all, in your head. It could be an idea, it could be thinking through things with some sort of energy.
So if in my case, for example, there is a lot of rajas, so is there a way, okay, I'm too rajasic, I'm gonna put myself in sattva, then maybe meditate in the holy name for 15 minutes, and you're like learning how to deal with the fluctuation of moods during the day. Is it correct?
What is the question?
Yeah, like the learning how to deal with the gunas, the fluctuation of the gunas during the day. Like if I feel I'm too rajasic, then to learn how to put myself more into sattva and trying to compensate. Is that right?
You could, or you could be like, okay, I've got a lot of rajas, it's not a bad thing. I'm going to use it for my seva. It's action, right? So if there's people who are just in sattva, maybe they're just studying. Maybe they're not actually doing. So rajas is not bad, it's just putting it into the mood of like, okay, I have a lot of energy now, I think I'm going to write an article, or whatever your seva is, I'm going to do more seva. You can put it into that instead of using it to criticize, or to compete, or to compare. You can say, ooh, I feel that rajas energy, I can't sit. Like instead of forcing yourself into sattva, it's like, ooh, okay, what's something I can do to add to this community? How can I help? What seva am I already working on? I'm editing, or whatever it is you're doing, do some more of that.
Okay. Thank you, Joshika.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good questions. I hope that I answered okay. Okay. Anyone else? Anurag?
Oh, yes.
Haribol?
Mataji.
Haribol.
Hi.
Nice
Thank
to
you
see
so
you.
much. Hello. This is my first class, Mataji.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you so much. Mataji, I have a question. The question is that can we change our nature? Like we are acting in different modes of nature, according to someone can be tamasic, someone can be rajasic, someone can be whatever they are like. So can they be like, I find more rajasic? Can we be shift to being more sattvic? Is it possible?
Yes, that's my next lecture. I've already prepared the slides. So once you identify what you are, there's ways to move yourself more into, if you're in tamas, if that's just your natural state, there's ways to move yourself into more rajas. You can't skip and go all the way to sattva. And if you're in too rajasic and you need some more sattva, there's some things you can do to move yourself into sattva. And so I'm going to take, that's a great question, and so I'm going to take us through that and give you something practical that you can try. It doesn't mean that your nature you might not go back to your nature if you're tamas, but at least you have some things you can do to move it, because it's not that it's a fixed thing, that you're just always tamas. Like even in one day it's fluctuating. That was what Bhadra was asking about. So you might have a predominant nature, but if it's slipping back to tamas or rajas, it doesn't mean that it's a permanent thing. You can do some of these different things I'm going to show you guys next time. And I've been doing this probably for about 10 years now with my clients. I make these different plans with them. Some of you guys have done it with me already. So I'll show you how to do that.
Okay.
I think it'll be clearer when I take you through the exercise next time. Thank you.
Yeah.
You anticipated the next class.
I also have one other question.
Sure.
Is it that, Mataji, we have one person can act in two different modes of nature? Like it can be a combination of two. A person can be tamasic and rasic at
Yes.
the same time altogether.
Yep. Yes, it is. Yeah, that's a good question. It's not so clear cut, right? We actually have all three all the time. So when I'm saying sattva, I'm just meaning predominant. But we have all three all the time.
Like a sattvic person can also act in tamasic.
Yeah.
Tamasic mode of nature.
They do every
And
day.
tamasic person can
Yeah.
also act in sattvic
Yeah.
mode of nature.
Yes, those gunas are fluctuating inside of us all the time. We have all three. So when you're calling somebody sattvic, it means that maybe that's like 51% or more. But the rest could be tamas and rajas. We have to have all three of those to be living, to be functioning. So when we say predominant, it's just more than like 50%. It's the most one, you know, but the other two are there for sure. That's what I was trying to say, like we need tamas to sleep. We need rajas to act, so we have a lot of that going on. You know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Haribol. And I think that might be it because Babaji's going to be here in 1 minute. So I can't tell if there's those 7 things are questions on the chat or no questions. Okay.
Yeah, one question is there.
Should I just try to answer real quick? I talk fast.
So, what role does Jyotish play? Because it talks about our mind and the strength and weaknesses we have.
I'm sorry, what role?
So, what role does the astrology play? Because astrology gives us information about our mind and strength and weaknesses.
That's the role it plays. Right? The role that it plays is it tells you about your strengths and weaknesses. That's true. But I don't know what the question is exactly.
Maybe because you are born in specific constellation.
Yeah, it gives you information on that. That's true.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a famous quote from Babaji's Param Guru. He was paralyzed, right? And then people wanted to do some ritual to, pacify the planets and whatever, and he forbade them. And he said that these planets, they are only indicators, they're not causes. So therefore doing something for the indicator doesn't change the cause.
Okay. Interesting.
So he said, grahaka eva smaraka, natu karaka.
Okay. I hope that helped whoever asked that question. I don't know that much about astrology, so I can't really speak to it, but thank you, Vilas. Okay, thank you guys very much. I'll see you next week. I gave you a little preview what we're going to talk about. I hope you have a good week. And I'll just leave it on for Babaji, or no, you leave that on and I get off here. Okay. Haribol, everybody. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Joshika.
you.